Barry isn't part of the solution, he's part of the problem.
What is up, you guys? I'm Charmx. Today I'm going to be reacting to Film Theory, the B movie lied to you by the film theorist. Now, I don't know, what do you mean the B movie lied to me? If so, that is unbelievable. I'm sorry. Anyway, with that being said, hopefully this is going to be quite interesting. The original link's in the description. Make sure you go subscribe to the Film Theorist. Without any further ado, let's begin. I had to make that joke. I just had to.
At least you're out in the world. You must meet a lot of girls.
Barry, is that why you left the beehive? To meet lady bees? Because I hate to break it to you, but you already have.
Hey, those are pollen jocks.
Wow.
Hey, Jock.
What do you think, Buzzy boy? Are you bee enough?
I'm not talking about those ones right there. I'm talking about those ones. Worker bees that go out and gather pollen, what you know as the pollen jocks. Yeah, they're all female.
Oh, female. What was that audio? First, are they actually all female? If so, why didn't the people who made, you know, the B movie, like, make it that way? Oh my goodness. I mean, we're already 28 seconds in, and the movie is getting ruined pretty fast. It's a new record for the film theorist.
Internet, welcome to Film Theory, the show that's about to give BuzzFeed a run for its money. Oh, wait, it all makes sense to me now. After staring at this stupid movie for way too long, something just clicked as I'm writing this script. You notice everyone's haircut in this movie? The women all have beehive hairstyles. Obvious.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'll give the animators of the movie a tip of the beanie right there, because, yeah, I did not know that.
Joke is obvious, but the guys, they all have buzz cuts. Buzz
oh
cuts.
My
and
goodness.
Here y'all think that my jokes are bad? This is a real movie that ran in real movie theaters.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is premium content.
So I'm sure by now you're all familiar with the memes coming out of the B movie, but in case you've never actually stopped to watch the movie, or you did watch it, but
I've seen it a long time ago, and I don't even remember the entire plot of it. I really do not. I remember them, like, leaving the hive. And then at some point I get the plot between the B movie and Wall-E mixed up. Then, you know, there's the "you want jazz" meme.
You like jazz?
That comes to my mind. So as far as the actual plot of the B movie, it's been so long since I've seen it, I've kind of forgotten it.
Need a refresher because the plot wasn't exactly the most memorable thing about it. Well then, here's what you need.
Exactly, alright.
Now, Barry B. Benson is a honeybee who travels outside of the hive, falls in love with a human woman named Vanessa.
You coming?
And eventually uncovers a shocking conspiracy. The bees are being enslaved by humans to produce honey.
It's just honey, Barry.
Just what?
That's the plot of the movie? It's been so long since I've seen it. When did the B movie come out? Like, in like 2006 or something?
Bees don't know about this. This is stealing. A lot of stealing.
So Barry decides to sue the entire honey industry and wins. As you can imagine, this has some unintended consequences. Now that the humans are no longer eating honey, the pollen jocks that harvest nectar for the hive no longer have to work, and that causes the world's plants to start wilting. So it's up to Barry and Vanessa.
He has a human girlfriend.
Oh, Barry.
And they make out!
To find the last remaining.
Yeah, it is kind of messed up, like, as a side note. But what were they thinking, you know, having a freaking human fall in love with a bee?
Flowers in America and pollinate plant life on Earth before it's too late. Oh, and a bunch of bees team up to save a commercial jetliner from crashing. Oh yeah, there's also that moment where Vanessa dies in a gruesome parasailing accident. So many things are wrong about this film.
What?
The fact that bees and humans can apparently talk to each other, yet Barry's the first bee ever to try striking up a conversation with anyone.
You like jazz?
The fact
There you go, there you go. You like jazz?
fact that Barry has a romantic rival, and that romantic rival is a human. But besides that, the fact that Ken, his romantic rival, has a bee allergy that the movie just treats like a joke, even though bee allergies are very real and very serious medical problems. I mean, seriously, you think that people are spending hundreds of dollars on EpiPens just for the lulz? And yet Ken is the one who's treated like the villain because he doesn't want to be in a room with a bee who could potentially kill him. And all of this wrapped in a movie about a love affair between an insect and a human. Nay, Jerry Seinfeld and a human. But perhaps worst of all is the message of the film, that bees are a vital part of the ecosystem, and without them, plant life as we know it would be wiped out. Because this
Isn't that true? Like, isn't that true though? Am I wrong?
simply isn't true. In fact, it's the complete opposite.
Vanessa.
And the environment as a whole would be
Alright, now you've got me even more intrigued. What do you freaking mean it's not true? You need bees to pollinate, right? Like, you have apple trees, right? Will the apples grow if they don't get pollinated? Or do they need to get pollinated? I know very little regarding the environment. Maybe I've been wrong in regards to how important bees are. And if they aren't that important, why do people care if they're going extinct?
be better off if Barry B. Benson and his brash buddies would just buzz off permanently. And yeah, I know we're all trained to love bees at this point, but get ready because today I'm gonna prove how everyone, especially the bee movie, has been lying to us. Now, what got me started on this episode was something I said a few weeks ago in the Tide Pod episode. Honeybee populations are on the rise for like the first time ever, and I shared that as a positive news story, but after I finished that episode, it got me researching. We hear all the time that honeybee populations are on the decline, and that this is a terrible thing for the ecosystem, but is it really? I was honestly surprised by what I found. First, honeybees aren't actually native to North America. They're an invasive species that was first introduced back in 1622 when European settlers brought them over. The Native Americans even called them the white man's fly. And let's be clear, they weren't brought over for their ability to pollinate plants, but rather for their honey. The honeybees we see in the US, like Barry B. Benson, all just started as agricultural animals, like cows. Probably more accurately, like chickens. Chickens are used to produce eggs, bees are used to produce honey. It actually took another 200 years before honeybees were brought over to California during the gold rush in 1853, and of course, in all of that time, it's not like the North American continent was like some desolate desert. Plant life was thriving in the Americas for thousands of years before European settlers showed up with their fancy beehives. So how is
If that's true, how did the plants get pollinated? Because I know, aren't there other insects that can also pollinate, like bumblebees? Bumblebees? They're like the fat ones, right? They're like massive. Were they also brought over?
that possible? Is everything we've been told about honeybees being an essential part of the ecosystem and a vital part of the reproductive life cycle of flowers wrong? Well, yeah. And
What?
no, but yeah. You see, pollinators are absolutely vital. 75% of all crops require pollination. However, the idea that honeybees are a critical part of that process in the US is a complete and utter myth. First, these black and yellow striped honeybees aren't the only type of bee out there.
Yeah, it's because the bumblebee, I think those are the ones that are like 3 to 4 times the size of the normal or the honeybees. So yeah, I guess, you know, if you don't have these guys, the other ones could take over.
There are more than 20,000
What?
species of bee. Yeah, 20,000.
What? 20,000?
The black and yellow stripy kind, known formerly as the Apis mellifera, less formerly as the western honeybee, is just one of them. For example, take Agapostemon, a genus of bee that sounds more like a rejected Digimon
Ew.
than an insect critical for sustained plant life on Earth. Agapostemon digivolve into Metal War Agapostemon. These insects don't make honey, and they look nothing like Barry B. Benson or the bees that we're all familiar with, but these little green guys are bees nonetheless. They're known as sweat bees. Unlike honeybees, which get their
Ew.
nutrients by making honey from the nectar of flowers, these feed from the sweat of mammals. And yeah, when I
Ew! What the what kind of bee is this?
say mammals, that includes humans. So if you've ever found yourself on a hot day swatting at one of these green-gray little bugs that seems to enjoy landing on your neck, it might not be a fly or wasp, but a sweat-thirsty bee trying to get a taste of that salty secretion. Let me lick your neck. So yeah, if you're starting to feel like you've been lied to your whole
Man, I'm not going outside anymore.
Life about bees, well, you kinda have been. So let's just rip that band-aid off entirely right now. Bees aren't just yellow and black, only a very few species actually make honey. Most don't do that twerk dance that we've been taught that they do. For most bees, stinging does not mean death, if they even sting at all. And those 20,000 species of bees aren't the only pollinators out there. Pollen wasps, ants, butterflies, moths, even some species of beetle can get the job done too.
Top story, a Tri-County bee, Barry Benson, is saying he intends to sue the human race for stealing our honey.
So if the world's honey economy were thrown into turmoil by a lawsuit set in motion by a talking honeybee who somehow figured out how to work the American legal system, no problem. There'd actually be plenty of other non-dancing, equally hard-working bees out there to pick up the slack. Or
Why the frick do you gotta ruin every movie? You gotta ruin every movie for me. Oh, then again, I wouldn't say the Bee movie had that much to ruin because it wasn't that good to begin with. But, nonetheless, this has still ruined it. It still ruined it. And I didn't even know that. There were 20... Oh, man, I'm tired. I didn't even know that. There are 20,000 different species of bee.
Or at least there would have been if it wasn't for Barry B. Benson in the first place.
What?
That's right, Barry and the rest of the western honeybees are murderers. But you don't see anyone putting them on trial, at least until today. And you had better believe that this insect uprising needs to be squashed. What I mean is that there are conservationists out there who believe that the environment would be better off without honeybees. Remember how I said honeybees are an invasive species brought in by the colonists? Well, according to Dr. Jonas Geldman of the University of Cambridge, honeybee hives harm the environment by crowding out all the other local pollinators. Quote, there's increasing evidence that unnaturally high densities of honeybees associated with beekeeping can exacerbate declines in wild pollinators. Besides competing with wild species for resources, honeybees are linked to the spread of diseases to wild pollinators via shared flowers, an effect that's likely amplified by trade with and movement of honeybees, end quote. And this isn't just some random guy ranting on his blog on the internet. This was published in Nature. Nature, the scientifically reputable magazine, not, you know, Nature as in published in the woods. It's not like this guy was pulling a primitive technology and cueing his article into the side of a tree. This shall be my legacy! Anyway, his conclusions aren't all that surprising. Anytime you introduce a new species to an environment, more often than not, it's gonna have negative consequences on the local species, because the invader doesn't
This is actually like really interesting and kind of blowing my mind. So we don't even need these honeybees to survive. It's friggin' news to me. It's friggin' news to me. And it says as if, you know, they're actually doing more harm than good. And for those of you who don't know, in America, if you go to the grocery store, the liquid honey you see on the shelf isn't actually liquid honey. It's not actually, for the most part. I've seen a lot of these documentaries recently where they're talking about how the liquid honey in stores isn't actually honey from bees. It's actually like a mixture of like corn syrup and a bunch of other crap because there's too much demand for honey and actual bee honey is way too expensive. So if you're going to your local grocery store getting some freaking liquid honey which isn't even real honey, you technically don't even need real honey. We don't even need these bees.
Have any natural predators and may be better suited to survive the new climate. I actually go much more in-depth in this episode covering the invasive species of the Pokemon verse over on Game Theory, so sting that eye icon after the episode to check it out. But when it comes to western honeybees, the data is there. In another Nature article published by First, the authors track the global decline of bumblebees, which again,
Yeah, they're the bumblebees. They're normally like a lot freaking bigger than the honeybees.
Clear are different from western honeybees. They also don't make honey, but bumblebees are on the decline, and it's the honeybee diseases spilling over into their populations that are causing it. Quote again, wild pollinators such as bumblebees are in global decline, one cause of which may be a pathogen spillover from managed pollinators like honeybees. The prevalence of deformed wing virus and the exotic parasite Nosema Latin name in honeybees and bumblebees is linked, as honeybees have higher deformed wing virus prevalence and sympatric bumblebees and honeybees are infected by the same DWV strains. Apis, remember that's the Latin name for western honeybees, is the likely source of at least one major emerging infectious disease in wild pollinators.
Well, looks like we're gonna have to start using more pesticides.
End quote. And they're not the only ones to conclude this. Another study, again looking at the impact honeybees are having on bumblebee populations, concluded the following. Given the available evidence, it's likely the pathogen spillover from commercial bees is contributing to the ongoing decline of wild bumblebees in North America. And that's only one of the ways the honeybees are actually killing off their fellow pollinators. When you look at insects, honeybees are unique because they actually remove nectar from flowers in order to make their honey, while other insects are able to pollinate flowers without stealing the nectar. While that might not seem like that big of a deal, this paper by Diane Thompson at the University of California, Santa Cruz found that the Western honeybee's strategy of creating nectar scarcity for other species ensures that the competition produce fewer offspring. Quote a final time, these results provide evidence that apis competitively suppress a native social bee known to be an important pollinator, with the potential for cascading effects on native plant communities.
If there's all of this, all this research done from these people who work for these, universities or just freaking newspapers of that, I'm surprised no one else is talking about it. I mean, I didn't know this until today. It sounds as if we need to get rid of the honeybees.
Bees have never been afraid to change the world.
Yeah, change it for the worse, Barry. Sit your bumblebutt down, Seinfeld. I'm not done with you. Because if that wasn't enough, honeybees have one final secret advantage in all of this. They live in protected communities. Unlike other pollinators who have to fend for themselves in the wild, honeybees, because they're agricultural animals, are protected by their farmers, thus giving them a survival advantage. It's a whole heck of a lot easier for an insect species to survive when it gets to live in a safe little box on a farm. Barry seems to think that honeybees are an important part of the environment, but nothing could be further from the truth. When it comes to ecological problems, Barry isn't part of the solution, he's part of the problem. In a way, the conclusion of the Bee Movie is actually right about one thing. Humans and honeybees do share a critical symbiotic relationship. Without human demand for honey, honeybee populations would collapse and fall into disrepair as Mother Nature exacted her revenge on the invasive species that for so many years has kept the native insect populations at bay. Barry B. Benson throughout the movie likes to pretend that honeybees are the victim, that they exist under the oppressive thumb of the evil human
But they're the problem.
Is this what it's come to for you? Exploiting tiny, helpless bees?
But Barry, you and all those other Western honeybees we see throughout this movie are the real problem. The real victims here are the native insect species whose territory you've encroached on, who you've deprived of nectar, and who you've outcompeted thanks in large part to humanity's protection. In the courtroom, Barry raises a chant of,
Free these bees!
"Free the bees indeed! Free the 19,999 other bee species that the imperialist Western honeybees have been keeping down for hundreds of years. Maybe then, nature can exist the way it was originally meant to. But hey, that's just a theory."
Someone thought this was a good idea. Exactly. Now here's a theory or a conspiracy. What if the Bee Movie was secretly funded by the bee farmers? Maybe it was the bee farmers who funded this movie as propaganda for the bees. I don't know, but I mean, I think MatPat's correct. And there's so much evidence to back up what MatPat's saying. Turns out, honeybees seem to be the problem and not the solution, which that blew my mind. This really ruined that movie. Anyway, with that being said, if you guys like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, possibly share it with a friend if you're new, and subscribe to join the family. Also, make sure you go subscribe to the Film Theater. So with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Boop.